the banking crisis is not over. The crises don't happen all at once in one day. They emerge, regulators deal with them, the other new investors come in, they go, oh, it's all good, we got this under control, and then there's 2 or 3 months of a quiet period, and then they just pop back up again. It's because they were never fixed in the first place. A lot of people think this all started with Silicon Valley Bank, and that was March 10th, 2023, when the FDIC declared them, well, basically took over, put them into receivership. But that's not quite the right starting date. The day before March 9th, there was another failure. It was Silvergate Bank, not Silicon Valley, but Silvergate. Silvergate failed, basically closed its doors and went bankrupt. And they were an FDIC insured bank. They were a member of the Federal Reserve System. So they weren't some kind of weird, semi-bank or shadow bank or whatever you want to call it. They were a real bank. But they had one foot in the mainstream banking world at the Fed, but they had another foot in the crypto world. And they were actually a portal between crypto and dollars, and you could buy and sell crypto and get dollars. They would credit your account and all that. But when I saw the crypto collapse coming, or not coming, it happened. November 2021, Bitcoin was $69,000. By November 2022, it was down to around $13,000, give or take. So that was a 90+% collapse. And I saw that. I said, well, there's no way this is confined to Bitcoin. I was right. A lot of crypto exchanges failed. But the question I kept asking myself, is there a danger, and there is a danger, that there'll be contagion from the crypto world to the banking world? That was the question I had, because crypto, it could all go to zero, knock yourself out. But if it goes into the banking world, we got much bigger problems. And it did. And Silvergate was that portal. Okay. Next day, Silicon Valley Bank fails. And the FDIC did a very interesting thing. They did their job. And by that, I mean, they issued a press release. The press release came out at 6 p.m. on Friday, March 10th, 2023. And it said, we are insuring all deposits up to $250,000. That's what we do. But if your deposit is more than that, you're uninsured. We're going to give you what they call a receivership certificate. Hang on to it. We'll get back to you in terms of what it's worth. You can't cash it in. We don't know what it's worth. We will then proceed to sell the assets to the bank, pay off creditors. And if, as and when there's anything left over, we'll distribute that to you on a pro-rata basis. But, just hang on. We'll get back to you in terms of what this is worth. Well, it turns out that, of course, this was all known. You said, look at the data. Silicon Valley Bank only had 3% insured deposits. 97% of the deposits were uninsured, and the amount was approximately $140 billion. And they weren't all like, $2 million A-round startups. You had Roku, Cisco, and other names, big Silicon Valley names that had multi-billion-dollar deposits. And for that matter, one of the crypto exchanges had a $3 billion deposit at Silicon Valley Bank. So it wasn't clear that they weren't going to fail. I mean, this was contagion and recontagion, if you want to think of it that way. So what happened over the weekend between March 10th and March 12th, all the crybaby billionaires, Bill Ackman, all these guys, they all go running to the White House saying, you don't understand what you're doing here. We got 200 startups in, Silicon Valley. They all got like 3-5 million. They got payrolls, they got employees, they got rent, they got technology development. You're going to destroy the tech sector if you don't bail this out. And so then on 6 o'clock Sunday, just 48 hours after the first announcement, by the way, I should add that, going back to the Friday announcement, that actually came out of the Brisbane G20 meeting in 2014. In 2014, Brisbane G20, we were still in the aftermath of the 2008-2009 financial crisis. There was an uproar. Citizens were, pardon my language, they were just pissed off. The taxpayers bailed out the banking system and all the billionaires kept their jobs. So Jamie Dimon, he's still collecting bonuses, Goldman Sachs, all of them. None of them failed. They would have failed, but for the fact that they were all bailed out. But the everyday Americans are like, unemployment's 9%. I lost my job. I lost my 401ks down 50%, et cetera. So there was a political reaction to that. So in Brisbane 2014, they came up with not the bailout theory, but the bail-in theory. And bail-in means that if a bank fails, the investors, the stockholders, the bondholders, the depositors, they have to basically pay off the creditors. They have to pay off the depositors. And only when there's nothing left would the government maybe chip in. So what, and they put the world on notice. The insured amount in Europe is 100,000 euros. US is $250,000. But the whole world was on notice. That's all we cover. Over that, you're on your own. Well, what the FDIC did on Friday was actually consistent with what they all said they were going to do in 2014. It was a bail-in. And if you had $1 billion deposit, you're going to contribute to the rescue. Within 48 hours, they did a 180-degree turn. They completely blew away the $250,000 insurance limit. They said, we're guaranteeing all the deposits, multi-billion-dollar deposits. By the way, a dirty little secret about what happened at the White House. I said that, the Silicon Valley billionaires were crying about all these little startups and all this stuff. The truth is, a lot of what Silicon Valley Bank was financing was green technology. They were a climate bank. And of course, that's all you have to say to the White House. Hey, this is green. And oh yeah. Now, what were they doing? I don't know, battery technology, better windmills. None of that stuff works, by the way, but no. they were in the White House sweet spot by saying green, and they were. That was actually what they were financing. Everyone thinks, oh, somebody's working on an app. They weren't apps. They were like battery power. So they get bailed out. At the same time, on Sunday night, now we're talking March 12th, they closed another bank, which was Signature Bank. Something about S, Silvergate, Silicon, Signature, all the S's were going down. Now, Signature Bank was another interesting case, which was Barney Frank was on the board of Signature. And if that name rings a bell, just think of Dodd-Frank. Dodd-Frank, 2010, 1,000-page legislation. I know, I met Barney. I know Chris Dodd very well. That was supposed to solve all the problems of the 2008, 2009 financial crisis, et cetera. Here, the author of the bailout legislation is on the board of the bank, and his bank gets shut down. Well, what's up with that? They bought government bonds, and when interest rates went up from 10-year note, treasury note yield to maturity went from 1 3/4 to 4, all those bonds lost 80% of the value. That's what happens on long duration bonds. Bond math is simple: rates up, price down, vice versa. Well, the rates were up, the price was down, so they were underwater and insolvent, and they got shut down. So Barney Frank's out whining the next day. He's like, "Hey, yeah." But that's true of every bank in the country. There's not a bank out there that didn't load up on treasury bonds at 1 3/4. They're all underwater. They're all insolvent. And by the way, the Fed announced a facility. They always have these 4 initials. I forget what this one was, BA or whatever. But basically what they said was, if you're a member bank and you have treasury securities that are where the mark-to-market value is below par, so you paid $10 million, but they're only worth $8 million, and that was the case across the board. So they get trillion dollars or more of bonds that were in that category. You can deliver them to us, and we will lend you for 1 year the face value. So you're putting up 80 cents of collateral, but you're getting a 100-cent loan. I said, I got a 15-year-old car. Will you lend me what I paid for it? Because it's a lot more than it's worth now. But that's what they did. So now my head's spinning. I'm like, well, I get all this stuff, but I'm like, oh, so you just guaranteed every deposit in the banking system without limit, and you just guaranteed every treasury bond at par value without limit. Yeah. What's left? What else do you have in your bag of tricks? Because you don't have it. There's nothing else you can do. Go back to 2008, they guaranteed every money market fund in the country. So, but here's Barney Frank whining, hey, yeah, my bank was in trouble, but so was every bank in the country. Why did you whack me and give all these guys a pass? Well, the answer is, Signature Bank was another crypto bank. It had a portal called Signet, and Signet was a portal to the crypto world. And that's why they whacked it. Notice they whacked 2 crypto banks. So now it's Monday morning, where are we now? The 13th. Everyone's asking Janet Yellen, it's like, wait a second, what just happened? You guaranteed every deposit in the banking system. And she's like, well, no, not really. It's only if you're systemically important. And you're like, okay, could you please define systemically important so we can tell? Because we're getting our money out of all the banks that are not. And the truth is you can't, because the system is so densely interconnected This is why they say financial contagion. I mean, it's a metaphor, but actually the mathematics of a viral spread, we just went through a pandemic, but this has been true, for as long as it's been studied. The mathematics of viral contagion are identical to the mathematics of financial contagion. The equations are the same, the way it spreads. And, of course, Janet Yellen can't define systemically important. Number one, they try, but they can't. Number two, I don't care how small you are. If you're a small bank and there's a run, the guy across the street, he's getting his money out of that bank. And again, it's like COVID. It's like it just keeps going, until the system collapses, which means by definition, just by the dynamics, there's no such thing as a bank that's not systemically important because they're all connected. Even the little banks are borrowing from the big banks, et cetera.